So the alien raid didn't go too well, did it, guys? I know we were all disappointed. I, for one, was really hoping that that creature from You Can Read was going to be revealed so that I could use him to scare my wife.
The horrible Urktar of all.
In the spirit of moving on from that, I decided that this time we should do some content about aliens, namely Chaos, a Steam game we were recently sent a code for. Normally I would try to go into the meaning or the mechanics behind a game in an interesting way, but today I thought it might be better to just sort of take you on the same journey I had when I was playing the game, because honestly it's sort of impossible to try and talk about what's happening here without making myself sound insane. So come with me on a journey into Chaos, the best worst game I've ever played. I'm Will with Clickist, now let's jump into Chaos. So going into this game I had no idea what to expect. I basically didn't read anything about it at all, which is unusual. Usually I'll read about a game before going to request a code, but this time the developer sort of just sent it to us, so once I was sure it was working, I just hit record and got started. I was sort of expecting yet another survival crafting game from the 3 screenshots I'd actually seen at the time. But boy was I wrong. Starting out, we're given an opening with some truly stunning voice acting.
The molten iron core has begun to cool down,
which explains that we're heading towards a planet because our own planet is dying. We're also told that several other ships, including one piloted by our brother, have already been sent to the planet, but that we have no contact with them. Also, the main character has a helmet in the style of Finn from Adventure Time, so that's neat. The first thing I noticed after I crash landed was an audio log, mainly filled with static and feedback. Having gotten off to a bad start, I kicked the door down, eventually, and took my first brave steps onto the surface of an alien world, which looked, well, surprisingly like an Earth autumn. Undeterred by the lack of alien flora, I set off, immediately discovering that I had the ability to teleport short distances, which I used to my advantage. After I was done prattling around with that, I eventually came across a house, and was examining what looked like an incense burner outside of it when I was suddenly magically teleported to a completely different location. After getting over the shock of having my body's molecules deconstructed in one location and relocated in another, I took off again. It was around this time that I came across my first local. It turned out just to be a statue, but there was a strange small creature nearby who I completely ignored. Having failed to get any sort of reaction from my new friend, I continued towards some nearby houses and came across the thrift store Halloween costume version of Ridley Scott's Xenomorphs. My first real contact with an alien species was not as peaceful as I was hoping, as the monster decided that I looked delicious and came at me growling. Unfortunately, they also know how to teleport and decided to use this power in the most annoying way possible, teleporting just after you've hit them, but in such a way that means that they've dodged the shot somehow. After backing up and spamming the fire button enough times, the alien dissolved into a wet pile of mess and goo. Victory had been achieved for the glorious human race. My first taste of alien blood thus achieved, I finally managed to reach the largest house in the area, where I found that the door was locked. With no clue what to do, I ended up searching the local houses, where I did eventually come across the key, and quickly made my way back. Inside there was basically no furniture apart from this weird abstract painting, and this broken well. Also half the roof was missing. Seeing no further option outside of searching even more houses, I decided to just jump into the well and go for a quick swim. Luckily, it turned out that I didn't need to breathe anymore, so I had no trouble making it down this long tunnel, through a few strange lobster-looking things and out the other side, where I discovered my first great mystery, some sort of great stone tower. Clearly something on this planet has a fondness for building Dark Ages era stone buildings. Ascending the Great Tower led me to an interesting discovery, a giant bell. It seems like the aliens here are very primitive from their stone buildings and lack of weapons, although teleportations and giant teethy mouths are nature's weapons. Regardless, I rang the bell, and after a few moments a wondrous thing happened. A rainbow road appeared in the air in front of me. After taking a brief pause to make sure I hadn't got bored and booted at Mario Kart instead, I stepped out onto the road and was immediately launched to the bottom of the tower. After stapling my broken legs back together and making my way through the tunnel again, I stepped out, very carefully this time, onto the magical road and shot forward across the sky, onwards to adventure! I looked back across the land I had just come from with a sense of awe and wonder, and then turned around and saw what looked like a modern city skyline poking out of a misty valley. Shocked by the discovery, I practically tripped over some sort of strange device, an audio log, and a brand new sniper rifle. The log filled me in on the thoughts of another Crash E, if you will, who seemed convinced that something on the world was intentionally causing the shuttles to crash here. Managing to prevent myself from saying "duh" out loud, I heard that she had planned to try and traverse the fog. Taking this as a sign from God, or more likely a signpost from the game developer, I descended into the mists myself. After a steep descent into the base of the valley, I spent far longer than I am willing to admit wandering around in the fog, attempting to discover where I was trying to get to. The one constant in my mind was that I had to reach that city that I could sometimes see over the horizon. After ascending and descending several hillsides and discovering that the teleportation device only really works when it feels like it, I did eventually manage to make my way to the city. Sort of. What is more accurate is that I found a church-like building just outside of the city. The door being locked, I decided to try something sneaky. I managed to wedge myself forward enough to see inside, then used my teleportation device to try and get in through the locked door. As you can all probably guess, this attempt backfired spectacularly and left me stuck halfway inside the door. On the plus side, while randomly spamming keys, I managed to figure out that the strange device I had picked up earlier was some sort of visor which allowed me to use thermal vision. Had I discovered this before entering the fog, I might have had an easier time of things, but regardless, it would still come in useful. Suitably cowed by the experience of being combined with the door, I did eventually escape by teleporting randomly around. With my newfound power of night vision, I explored the grounds of the church for the real way of getting inside. I came across an odd looking brick and pressed it, discovering that one of the two lights at the front of the church had lit up, so I assumed that lighting them both up was my goal. After searching the rest of the grounds, I failed to find any other obvious hints, so I decided to head towards the city. Even if it didn't reveal the way forward, it might provide me with some answers about the technological advancement level of the people who lived here. Unfortunately, I discovered that there was some sort of strange invisible barrier technology employed to keep me out. After venting my frustration to some of the locals in a very therapeutic sort of way, I returned to the church to find that the other light had come on and the door was now unlocked. Huzzah! Inside, I discovered more sparse furnishings and odd artwork, before coming across another one of those odd incense teleportation devices. Holding my breath as best I could, I activated it and flung myself onwards into the unknown. I woke up in an identical room to the one I had just left. After assuring myself that this was in fact a different room, I stepped out into a large stone bridge and stared out into the infinite void in which I found myself. Once again, I was surrounded by medieval structures, which were starting to feel a bit off to me honestly. So I decided to just say screw it and give up on placing these aliens on a technological timeline. I ran into the next building and was immediately confronted with aggressive alien enemies. Dispatching them swiftly, I found that the building was some sort of puzzle with 2 lifts in it. I put my thinking cap on and used the lifts to clear the building of bad guys. After 10 minutes of running up and down the tower on these very slowly moving lifts, I discovered that the solution was to shoot the ropes holding up this captive alien, who looks like all the other aliens, so I promptly took off my thinking cap and threw it into the void. After making my way through a few more rooms and tunnels with aliens inside, I came across the most disturbing piece of anachronistic architecture to date. Smack bang in the middle of this medieval fortress I was exploring, it seemed as if someone had brought the set of Star Trek The Next Generation in. Scratching my head at the lack of cohesion between visual elements in the game, and at how this futuristic space door somehow required an old iron mortis key to unlock, I proceeded onwards and was immediately set upon by a mysterious gun-toting cat-headed creature. The story of our epic struggle will surely be told throughout the centuries, but after a brave fight he eventually keeled over and vanished in a puff of non-existence. Upon inspecting his room, I discovered some equipment which looked like it was used to bring down our ships, as well as a note from the creature, presumably left behind so if anyone killed him they would have answers, which explains that he had been given the opportunity to come here instead of staying in prison, and now he was making sure no one else was going to come here. Leaving the room more baffled than when I had entered it, I left, climbed another ladder, used another lift, and found myself presented with another Bell/Rainbow Road arrangement. With the experience gained from the last time I used one of these contraptions, and the threat of the endless snowy void below me, I saved before stepping out onto the road, and once more shot myself forward into the future. Or the medieval past, I really wasn't sure at this point. Once again, out in the wilderness, I wandered around the snowy hills for some time, trying to discover where I was supposed to be going. After picking up some more ammo for my lightning gun, I came across a new enemy. These weird mohawk things jump around the landscape with an expression of constant surprise on their faces. In many ways, taking them down felt more like I was doing them a favour than hurting them. After wandering around and thinning out their numbers, I eventually came across what looked like a road and started to follow it. After a few moments, the entire world began to shake and I started taking damage. Turning around, I discovered that I was being avalanched on. In abject panic, I couldn't find a way forward, and shooting the ice blockage didn't seem to do anything. So I scrambled the cliff face in front of me and waited for the ice storms to subside. When it eventually did finish, I climbed down to discover a huge pile of snow in my way, well, ostensibly in my way. As it turns out, one of the powers that I assume my suit gives me was to walk through piles of snow. Shooting the blockage a few times, I discovered that I clearly hadn't been trying hard enough to clear it before, as it now shattered into little pieces. Unfortunately, my suit's snow incorporeality powers stopped working, and I was completely unable to progress forward. After rewinding my life by a few minutes, I tried again, and this time I broke my way through the ice wall and passed into the tunnel. I waited to make sure that the entrance was indeed blocked up, and discovered that the snowball must also have had powers of its own, as it teleported into place instantly. Turning away from this wondrous discovery, I continued down the long path the tunnels took me on, killing several beasts on the way with my newly reloaded and only slightly not working lightning gun. I stepped out of the tunnel onto a warm, sunny beach and found myself thinking about the severely disparate climates of this planet, wondering why my species even thought this planet was a suitable one to live on. Ignoring the voice in my head that told me that this was all batshit insane, I continued to the shoreline and found a raft to ride on, once again confused by the difference of technology between different areas, as if they were all completely unconnected and stitched together randomly like some sort of Frankenstein's monster of a world. Also, a brief aside here to say that if for some unknowable reason you want to play this game yourself and don't want to know the story, then you should stop watching right now, because there is going to be spoilers galore. I set out on my trusty craft to reach the only island in the nearby vicinity. Shooting forward at a speed and level of handling I thought impossible from sticks and cloth stapled together, I soon found myself on the final steps of my voyage of discovery. After wandering the beach for a little while, I discovered another crashed pod, presumably belonging to another of my race, and explored the sites a little. Unfortunately, I didn't come across anything, and was unable to interact with the pod in any way. It was at this point that my adventure took a turn for the worse. I spent 30 minutes climbing up a mountain, walking all around, climbing down the other side of the mountain, and generally just trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. Just as I was about to give up and call the time I had spent here a wasted effort, I accidentally activated my goggles, reminding myself that those were a thing I had. I used them to examine the crash site, and finally came across an audio log which I had failed to spot before because it's so small and in the middle of the ground instead of, say, inside the pod where it was almost certainly recorded. Through the medium of terribly acted audio recording, I discovered the tragic news that my brother had gone down, recording his final moments for posterity. Ignoring the question of how the recording had got outside of the pod when there didn't appear to be any hull breaches and the hatch was closed. Actually, for that matter, how were there bits of ship all over when the pod itself seemed to be completely intact? Never mind that, the important thing here is that I turn to the camera as it fades out, and a single screen of text explains how I feel, and that I have definitely saved my entire race from a planetless future, as long as we ignore the teleporting alien monsters, weird coat of kangaroos, and of course, the pterodactyls and green statues. If this end screen doesn't perfectly sum up the entire experience here, then I don't know what the hell does. Firstly, there has to be bad for good to exist. What? Why is that even here? I don't think that the game has earned a monologue about the meaning of perspective or the black and whites of life. Whatever. The next paragraph isn't any better. To find out why none of the others who came before you never reported back is just wrong. There is a double negative here, which on its own isn't too offensive, but at the end of this complete trip I went on actually physically hurts me. I assume from these last few sentences that we're supposed to think we've saved our race and they'll just all move to this planet now, but we don't actually get to see it. We just get this black screen with white text and the words "End Game." Well, boy, if that wasn't worth it. At first, when I played this game, I was actually going to recommend it. It's completely mental and will at least give you some laughs from the insane crap that keeps happening. The way it switches between fantasy and sci-fi elements, the really oddly designed monsters which literally look like aliens wearing alien costumes at times, even the inclusion of the Rainbow Road, which smacks of a game which has randomly purchased elements just kind of thrown into it. That is, I was going to recommend it. Until I saw the price. $20 or about 15 quid in the UK is far too much for this game. There is almost no gameplay beyond walking to the next thing, but unlike a walking simulator, it doesn't even have compelling events or writing. Beyond that, I hasten to point out that I completed this game in an hour and a half, with literally 30 minutes spent flailing around at the end there, and several times where I accidentally extended playtime by getting stuck in walls or doors or failing to realise that I had fucking vision goggles that the game never fucking told me about. This game easily clocks in at under an hour if you don't mess up. If this game does come down in price to a few quid, then I definitely recommend picking it up. Even if you just trick your friends into playing it somehow or record it to laugh at all the insane shit, it does have its moments. But as of right now, I kind of find it literally impossible to recommend this game to anyone, unless you somehow get off on bad voice acting, but then at that point you might as well just go and play Oblivion. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, then like, subscribe and share us with your friends. It really helps us out and will make sure that we continue to grow and put out new content. You can also go and check out my channel where I recently did a video about RetroBite in the UK, if you're into that sort of thing.